two convoys of buses snaked their way through the crumbling ruins of the besieged city, taking the fighters to safety in rebel-held areas outside the city under a deal agreed between the insurgents and forces loyal to Assad. And the Sunni Muslim fighters had held out in the old city of Homs and neighboring districts despite being undersupplied, outgunned and subjected to more than a year of siege and bombardment by Assad's forces. And at the same time as they were evacuated from Homs, dozens of captives held by rebels in the northern provinces of Aleppo and Latakia were also freed as part of the same deal. But a planned relief convoy trying to reach two rebel-blockaded Shi'ite towns outside Aleppo was turned back by fighters from al-Qaeda's Nusra front, raising questions about the successful completion of the Homs operation. Provincial Governor Talal Barazi denied reports during the day of any halt to the evacuation, which the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights Monitoring Group said had transported 400 fighters out of the old city. Video footage of the first convoy showed a group of men climbing aboard a green bus, watched by around a dozen men in khaki uniform and black flak jackets marked police. In front of the bus was a white car with the markings of the United Nations, which helped oversee the operation. Activists said a total of 1,900 people, mainly rebel fighters, were being evacuated. The Syrian Arab Red Crescent said on its Twitter account it had sent ambulances to take wounded people out of the city center. Later video showed them arriving in a rebel-held area north of the city. Unlike what happened in an evacuation of civilians from Homs in February, activists said they were not detained for checks by security forces and were allowed to keep their light weapons. Assad gains and the evacuation comes after months of gains by the army, backed by its Lebanese militant ally Hezbollah, along a strategic corridor of territory linking the capital Damascus with Homs in Assad's Alawite heartland on the Mediterranean. The final rebel withdrawal from the center of the city, known as the capital of the revolution, when protests first erupted against Assad in 2011, would consolidate his military control ahead of a June 3 presidential election. Assad is widely expected to be the runaway victor in the vote, which his opponents have dismissed as a charade. They say no credible election can be held in a country fractured by civil war, with swaths of territory outside government control, 6 million people displaced and another 2.5 million refugees abroad. The fighters are expected to leave Homs in up to 9 convoys, carefully synchronized with the aid delivery and the release of captives held by the rebels near Nubal and Zahra, and the town of Qasab in Latakia province. One activist said a Russian national and several Iranians were among those being released by the rebels. There was no independent confirmation, but Moscow and Tehran have both supported Assad in the 3-year-old civil war. More than 150,000 people have died in the conflict. Millions more have fled their homes and the government has lost control of swaths of territory across the north and east. Fighting regularly kills more than 200 people a day. Provincial Governor Barazi said Wednesday's operation would ultimately clear the whole of Homs city of gunmen and weapons, suggesting rebels would also be evacuated from the suburb of Al-Ware on the city's northwestern outskirts. Rebels in Al-Ware and districts around the old city have held out against Assad's forces since the army drove them out of the ruins of Baba Amr district, a cradle of the rebellion, in March 2012. Since then the army has gradually tightened its grip around the rebel areas, blocking weapons, medical supplies and food. It allowed hundreds of civilians to leave in February after lengthy UN mediation. Additional reporting by Mary M. Karani, editing by Andrew